Is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Jacob Rees Mogg.
Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg, leading Britain's conversation from God's own county of Somerset this morning. And we're going to be discussing Boris Johnson and the comments he made in his Telegraph article on Monday about banning the burqa. Boris is against banning the burqa, but he went on to say that if you say that it is weird and bullying to expect women to cover up their faces, then I totally agree. And that it's absolutely ridiculous that people should choose to go around looking like letterboxes. This has led to a great row. He's been told to apologise by the Prime Minister, Theresa May, the Chairman of the Conservative Party, Brandon Lewis. But Cressida Dick said he hasn't done anything illegal and there'll be no investigation by either the police or the Equalities Commission. Conservatives seem to have divided between Leavers and Remainers once again. It seems to be a proxy for Brexit on the burqa rather than anything other than that. And Dominic Grieve has said he wouldn't stay in the party if Boris were the leader of it. And there's now an investigation that's going to be launched by the party. So the question for this morning is, what do you think Boris's place in the Conservative Party is in future? Is he a pariah or is he a prince? What do you think? Please get in touch. Call 0345 60 60 973, text 84850, or tweet at LBC. Whatever your views are, I shall be very interested to hear from them, so please do get in touch. And what is my view? Well, I think that asking for an apology was a mistake. I think this was a normal newspaper column by Boris using the sort of forthright language that he's got a reputation for as a great wordsmith, and that his basic argument was a liberal one, that we shouldn't have laws stopping people wearing the clothing that they want to wear. And that's something I agree with, that there used to be laws discriminating against Catholics in this country, that you weren't allowed to have the rosary, for example, and there were severe penalties if you did. I don't think a free country has this type of anti-religious legislation, so I'm with Boris on not banning the burqa, and I think it's legitimate, nonetheless, to say that you don't like a particular item of clothing, that you don't think it adds to female pulchritude, which is, of course, the purpose of the burqa in the first place. Along with that, I think that Boris is a big and charismatic figure, somebody who connects with the broader electorate outside metropolitan areas, that he has a charisma about him that has made him one of the leading figures within the Conservative Party, and that there is an element of envy of him from other politicians, which is unattractive, and that this kangaroo court that the Conservative Party is proposing to set up is hardly justice and hardly in accordance with the party's own code. What it says is that when we receive a formal complaint, we will investigate in a timely and confidential matter. So confidential that Central Office put out a press release saying what they were going to do. It then goes on to say at stage 1, the investigating officer may dismiss complaints that are obviously trivial and or lacking in merit and or cannot fairly be investigated or cannot be investigated. Well, it seems to me this is lacking in merit, and when you've had the chairman and the leader of the party say he should apologise before anything has happened, it cannot fairly be investigated because the judge and jury have already been out into the jury room, come back and concocted their decision that he's expected to apologise. So I don't think it can be a fair process, and I think that Boris has nothing to apologise for. But I'm glad to say calls and tweets are coming in. We've got one from Jason saying Boris is the only choice the Conservatives have if they wish to remain in power or stop splitting. Oh, he kindly goes on to say, with Mr. Rees Mogg elevated to cabinet position, we would have the positive, intelligent and visionary leadership team needed to enable the country to bloom post-Brexit. Well, Jason, that's very flattering, thank you. But I'm now going to go to Roberta in Rainham. Roberta, what would you like to say this morning? Hello, Roberta, are you there? I can't hear Roberta in Rainham coming through, so we'll go to Ranjit in Birmingham. Ranjit, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello, Ranjit. Oh, good.
Yes, yes.
Far away. I can hear you loud and clear. Yes, please.
Okay, basically...
What would you like to say?
What I would like to say is that Boris has got a very good future in the Conservative Party. I am a Labour supporter, So don't begrudge me for that. What he's done it very tactfully.
No.
What's happened is that you've lost a lot of votes to the UKIP, and that's what he's gone and said this about trying to get the UKIP vote back into the Tory party. It might be good for the Tory party to win them the next election, but it's not very good for Theresa May. But he can express what he wants to say, but using the letterbox phrase, I think, was very like a playground thing for a distinguished gentleman that he's supposed to be. He shouldn't be using expressions like that. You see what I mean? Hello?
I absolutely see what you mean, but do you think using that phrase is enough to require him to apologise, or do you think that phrase is just going a little bit further than you would like?
I don't think he needs to apologise, but it is a phrase that he's used, which is like, I would say, gutter politics. If he was trying to be legitimate and saying that he feels that women that have to wear the veil, are forced into it, he should have tackled it a little bit better, because you can't use what Donald Trump, uses, that kind of language. I mean, I listen to you or watch you on the television, and I think that, like, obviously one of the callers said, you're very intelligent, you're educated, so you're reserved in the way you say something. You would have said it in a different way to what Boris done, because of this buffoon type of character he plays. I don't think that a lot of intelligent people like to listen to what he says. And I'm not saying UKIP voters are thick, but you have basically lost a lot of votes, and he's trying to get that floating vote back. And I think it's tactical, and I don't think he's on his own. But while he's done this, I think there's probably a few more people around him, and he's going to force a leadership challenge. That's my opinion, but
Well, thank you, Ranjit.
Can you say one more thing? Yeah, some people who are being attacked now.
Yes,
and
so far away.
Pulled off. They're having their burqas pulled off. Yeah, off their face. I think that's a direct result of what Boris has said. Because other people before were quite tolerant.
I mean, I think that's obviously disgraceful.
And they've just
That's obviously disgraceful.
Yeah, they've been reminded that these people who are wearing the burqa are different, but not necessarily nasty.
But Boris obviously defended people's right to wear the burqa, which I think is important. But thank you, Ranjit. I think basically you're saying Boris is trying to appeal to the UKIP vote, and he went further than you think was good manners, essentially. I'll now go to Mark in Palmer's Green. Mark, good morning. What's your thought on this?
Bon Mane, Jacob, absolute pleasure to speak to you again. It's
well, thank you.
Simple. It's quite simple, really. Boris Johnson's position in the Conservative Party should be as the leader, and should have always been as the leader, in my opinion. And I am livid that we have been denied the right person to be standing at the helm of Brexit for the last 2 years, because I am convinced that if we would be in a very different place now as far as our exit from that stinking political project, aka the EU, if we'd had Boris running the show. But instead, we have had Mrs May, who I trusted to deliver UK independence, because she promised us that Brexit means Brexit, and no deal is better than a bad deal, etc. Then we get the disgraceful betrayal on Brexit with that minging, stinking Chequers deal. So I think the sooner that man is in number 10, the better, in my opinion.
Well, we certainly agree on the Brexit proposals coming out of Chequers, but what do you think about this row on the burqa? Do you think Boris was right to say that ladies wearing them look like letterboxes, or do you think that would have been better left unsaid?
I think we should have the freedom to criticise and make fun of all religions. And I'm glad Boris Johnson has got the debate going on this, because, to be honest with you, Jacob, I'm sick and tired of walking on eggshells and pussyfooting around that religion. We need to have the freedom to be able to call a spade a spade. I think they do look like letterboxes, and I thought it was quite funny, actually. There you are. I've said
So you're with Ren Atkinson, who thinks it's a good joke. No?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm all in favour of calling a spade, but you've always got to be careful not to call a spade a shovel, I've thought. But thank you for that, Mark. Thank you for calling in again. We've had lots of tweets from Mario. As a Labour Party supporter, member and activist, I sincerely hope Boris becomes Tory leader. It would galvanise the Labour membership and unite both wings of the Labour Party. Bring him on. Labour would win the general election outright. So I think that's a great view. I probably have that view of Mr Corbyn, that I think he helps the Tories. And Steve says, Jacob, the language Boris used, such as pillarbox or bank robber, is not appropriate. If this was used by a school child, I'm sure a teacher would take action. So for a politician to use this language, I don't think it's acceptable. For this reason and many other gaffes, I would never vote for Boris as leader. Well, please continue getting in touch. Call on 0345 60 60 973 or text 84850 or tweet at LBC. You're listening to Jacob Rees Mogg on LBC. It's now 10:15. Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg from Somerset. We're discussing whether Boris Johnson is a prince or pariah within the Conservative Party after his comments on the burqa last week. I'm very much in the category of thinking he is a prince and a leading figure in the party that we greatly need. But this is a row that hasn't only involved the Conservative Party. Not so long ago, Emily Thornberry, on Question Time, had some quite interesting comments to make when she was sitting next to the UKIP leader Nigel Farage, and I think the Conservative Anna Soubry was on the panel at the same time.
I certainly think that in court that witnesses and defendants should not be covering their face. I think it's really important that juries get an opportunity to assess people, and they can't do that if their face is covered. And I'm afraid I just don't think. And I also agree with the lady at the back who says that certain carers, it's really important to be able to establish a close... I wouldn't want my 4-year-old looked after by somebody wearing a burqa. I wouldn't want my elderly mum looked after by somebody wearing a burqa. They need to be able to show their face. I wouldn't mind if they worked in records in the hospital. They could wear whatever they like in those circumstances.
Now, as it happens, I don't agree with Emily Thornberry on that. I'd be quite happy for my children to be looked after by somebody wearing a burqa, and I think my mother would resent having somebody looking after her, so I don't think it applies. But it's a very interesting question, and it affects people across the political spectrum. We've had a comment from Michael, which I think is a very interesting one. Boris is neither a prince nor a pariah. He's a deeply flawed human, as we all are. But in showing willingness to engage with a subject we've all been brought to heel on by political correctness, he's shown strong leadership. Leadership we badly need right now. Good for him. Anonymous doesn't agree, though. Can I encourage people to put their names? I think it's a bit wet to hide behind anonymity, but I'm going to read this one out. I keep hearing how clever Boris Johnson is supposed to be. Academically, maybe, but he's a loose cannon. The gaffes and bad decisions he keeps making are just too many. Boris is purely out for Boris. Well, that's some anonymous critic. But now, Roberta in Romford, you're back on a better line, I hear. We've been waiting to hear from you. So, Roberta, what is your view?
Hello, thanks for listening to my call. I'm trying to be brief. As I said earlier, I've got a lot of bullet points. Boris, he, I believe, did make a statement that should have been done differently. I do believe personally most of the population here in the UK find the burqa, I will call it, intimidating. First of all, it's black. Black is a dark colour, and I find that intimidating. When the Muslim men will wear white, the black ladies wear black, and if they're over in their home countries, if they're not born over here, black attracts the heat, and these ladies suffer with the heat beating down on them. There is another problem.
Now, that's a very interesting point. Can I ask you just about that point?
Yes.
Do you think the burqa is oppressive for the women who have to wear it, and that therefore there's an issue of freedom for those women over the wearing of the burqa?
I do believe so, and I have a cousin who works in the NHS. She's a matron. They find within the NHS that lots of ladies wearing the burqa, especially if they've come over from the Arab states where there is oppression, they are vitamin D, they're deficient. They have a lot of problems with
absolutely.
their health. Okay, that's one point. Yes, sorry, ask me.
So I was just interested, do you think it's actually oppressive of women? So would you ban the burqa because of this?
Would I ban the burqa? Roberta, yes. I don't like the burqa. I mean, I like to speak to people. I find it quite difficult to face a person with a burqa and start chatting to her. I like to chat, and I do talk to young Muslim girls when I go backwards and forth into London. If I go into London, I like to talk. But I could never talk to a person with a burqa. One other point.
Burqa. Okay.
Yes. No, there are lots more. Freedom of speech. We have many marches on our streets in Luton and in the East End, in Tower Hamlets, etc., where these ladies and the men, they walk through our streets calling out for Sharia law and death to all infidels. Now, they have a voice. They are telling us that we are infidels and they want us dead. Now, Boris said they look like boxes. Okay. Why aren't these groups investigated? Why are they allowed to walk through our streets? We have Sadiq Khan with the balloon of Trump. Nothing was done about it.
Okay, we're slightly going from the subject, so thank you very much, but that's a fascinating point. I'm now going to go to Paul in Southampton. Paul, do you think it's a matter of free speech? Do you want to ban the burqa?
Good morning, Jacob. I don't necessarily want to ban it, not legally, but my concern is similar to the previous caller, that I believe it's 80% of communication is non-verbal. So, when I'm out and about, I'm one of these people that likes to say hello to people, acknowledge them, eye contact, etc. And I see it similar to anyone who's wearing a hoodie or whatever, where, the person underneath may well be a perfectly law-abiding, reasonable person, but, I just find it very difficult. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Not that I've come across that many people with burqas, but certainly more hoodies. And I sort of view them in a very similar way. I'm out walking, cycling.
But aren't hoodies a bit different? Because hoodies tend to be worn by young men and burqas are worn by ladies, and therefore the whole appearance is a different question.
Yes, you're right. But the hoodie and the burqa, depending on exactly how the hoodie is being worn, can quite often be pulled around the face to a point where you just can't recognise somebody if you wanted to. I think what Boris said, I would view more as an observation, perhaps, than an opinion. In terms of his position in the party, whether he's broken the code of conduct or not, I'm not sure. I know you touched on that before, but I think political correctness is having too much influence on everything that's going on at the moment. I do feel that freedom of speech for the majority of the population, is being eroded. And I think politicians are being so bogged down with political correctness issues that, it's a wonder we get any normal government business done at the moment.
Well, that's a very good point. The government business must be carried on in spite of political correctness. And Carl rather agrees with you, who tweeted to say, I think your comment, Boris, is spot on. Banning a garment which others prefer to wear is wrong and questionable. However, anyone, including public figures, should be able to comment on what their personal opinions are over clothing or any other subject for that matter. So that seems to be a pretty common view at the moment. So let's go to Susan in Watford. So, Susan, what's your view on the burqa and on Boris?
First of all, I agree with Roberta and your last caller wholeheartedly. Both of them came up with some very good points. Boris, I think, is brilliant. But unfortunately, I think the Conservative in government are very worried about him, and rightly so. And I think they're just listening and waiting for him to say something so they can round on him. And secondly, they haven't bothered about Prince Philip, and my God, that man has really pillaged some, countries, slitty eyes. They didn't say that he couldn't be in, represent, our royal thing. They didn't round on him as much. He got about 3 days in the paper and he's left. Oh, that's Prince Philip. Boris is Boris. Sometimes he should think about what he's saying, but most of the time he tells the truth, which in the Conservative government is a good thing. That's what I think.
Well, Susan, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's been used by his political critics to try and bring him down because he's so popular. I think there's a lot of envy underlying it, and I think it's very unattractive and has been a really silly mistake for the Conservative Party because Boris is one of our most popular leading figures. So, well, Susan, thank you. I'm very much in agreement with you. As is Claire, who got in touch to say Boris would make a fantastic PM. The Burqa issue has been weaponised by the Remainer Brigade, and she then goes on to say with Theresa May at its helm. It does appear, however, that the majority of the Conservative Party members are in support of Boris, and I think that's true. We've just got time before the half hour for Anthony in Staines. If you could be quick, Anthony, what's your thought?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Rees Mogg. My opinion about Boris is, without an apology, he's finished as a politician in the modern Conservative Party, the party that Theresa May, don't forget, she started that process of detoxification. This is what brought the Conservatives back into power. And he simply has to make this gesture, this tiny gesture, to explain himself, to some emollient gesture towards the community that he's slighted here. If he can do that, then he should be back in government, right in the heart of government, because he's a big talent. You know, he's very popular, obviously, with the public. But without that apology, I'm afraid...
What would you suggest he says?
I don't think he has to say anything.
What form of words would you suggest he says?
I think he has to perhaps...
OK, what sort of gesture?
Possibly meet with Muslims. We have the oldest mosque in the country near here in Woking. Perhaps visit Woking Mosque, Regent's Park Mosque. He has to show that...
Because he did go to Liverpool to apologise once. Do you remember that? He had to go off to Liverpool, and that became a bit of a bun fight.
And if you do that, you can then recover and put out this fire that is lit. And as far as leadership is concerned, can I just say we do have excellent leadership in the country under Theresa May, an improving economy, as we saw yesterday, and the Tory polls rising. So stand behind her. You've got an excellent
Which is very good news, yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your robust support for the leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister. Extremely welcome. So do come back on again in future. It's now just coming up to 10:30. Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg from Somerset. We're asking, is Boris Johnson a prince or a pariah of the Conservative Party? Please get in touch by calling 0345 60 60 973, text 84850, or tweet at LBC. And I'm going to go to Paul in Ilford, because we've got lots of calls. The switchboard is full. So, Paul, what's your thought?
Good morning, Jacob. Well, my thinking is the more important question is, why is Boris Johnson deliberately trying to undermine Theresa May? I mean, he's an intelligent, cunning, deceitful man, and I've been a Tory voter all my life. I wouldn't vote for this man, not in a chance in hell. I'd rather vote for Jeremy Corbyn than him. And the division that he's causing in the Tory party at the moment. And it's not the first time he's done it. He's done it with the Brexit stuff. Caused a great big uproar, you know. And I just think he's a power-crazy megalomaniac that really needs to be showing that. People need to understand how deceitful and how manipulative and how cunning he is.
Do you see this? Do you see this through the Brexit prism? Did you support Remain, or did you support Brexit?
No, I supported Remain.
You supported Remain? Because it does seem to me that a lot of the backing for Boris now, and the Telegraph had a piece on this, Remainers are criticising him by and large, and Brexiteers are backing him. And it's slightly odd that even the Burqa has a Brexit colouring.
It's just I'm going to Boris Johnson as a man, like with that Remain, with the when he wrote his letter, was it in the Times that he wrote to her? Before he produced his thoughts
Telegraph.
Before he gave his opinion on whether he wanted to stay or exit, I knew that he was going to exit, and I knew the division that it would cause, and it did. It caused division all over the country. And that man, then, he created division in the Tory party, and this is the same thing that he's doing now. He's created division again. Jeremy Corbyn's just done it with the Jewish thing, and now Boris Johnson is doing the same thing because he's trying to win votes off of the likes of supporters for Tommy Robinson. That's what I see, and I see that he's undermining.
Okay, so Paul,
Theresa May...
You're clearly in the pariah camp, so thank you for calling with that. We're now going to go to Sean in Durham. We've got so many callers, I'm going to have to keep people brief. But Sean, what's your thought?
If we had said that at the place of our work, we would have been sacked on the spot. So can you tell me what the education yous have got? Because I tell you what, I think yous are all half-wits. The whole government...
Okay, tell me...
The whole government is...
Why do you think people would have been fired for saying this?
Because there would have been. Because...
In what sort of place of work?
You say you've all got common sense. You've got no common sense at all, man. You're horrible.
Okay, but I want to explore your thought. Who would have been fired? Because the Equalities Commission has come out and said that they wouldn't hold an investigation into this because it doesn't breach any of their rules. They may not like it.
Anybody would have been
What
fired.
evidence do you have for that?
Well, any place of work, if you came out with something like that, you'd have been sacked on the spot, man. You all should be sacked.
But
You're a horrible racist party. You are a horrible racist party.
Oh, okay. So you're basically anti the Conservative Party because the Equality and Human Rights Commission has said that they don't have anything to investigate because it doesn't fall within its remit of investigating breaches of equality law, and therefore it would be odd to be fired for not doing something that breached equality law. And so I think you just don't like the Conservatives, which is fair enough, lots of people don't, but I don't think that's the same as thinking that Boris's comments were fundamentally wrong, and they're not that dissimilar from Emily Thornberry's. Do you want to fire Emily Thornberry too?
I want to fire everybody that comes out with some ridiculous comments like that. I think it's shocking. I think it's making this country a mockery, and you just want to catch yourselves on.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sean, for your clear and forthright view, which is very welcome. Sam in Slough, what is your comment on this?
Hi, Jacob. Right.
Morning.
Okay. Morning. First of all, I don't believe in politics. I mean, I don't follow politics at all. But what Boris Johnson has said with regards to burqa, I think a bit of Trump has rubbed off on him. Boris Johnson tries to be funny, and I think we shouldn't take it seriously. What he said something that he wanted to say. It doesn't mean that, I'm a Muslim myself. It doesn't mean that because he said that, we're going to jump down his throat or we should create havoc. Oh, my God, how dare you say that? Everyone is entitled to freedom of speech. I mean, we all do it. And I think taking things so minute, so seriously, that's where we go wrong. He said something. First of all, let me just tell you, with regards to burqa, I think what we're trying to talk about here is the veil on the face. That's what everyone is trying to talk about. The veil on the face, not the burqa itself, because the burqa covers the body. The veil on the face covers the face. And nowhere in my literature, in my Quran or in the stories from the Prophet, it says that we have to cover our face. It's by choice that they do it. And with regards to, I believe one of the caller, Roberta, said, it's black because they're being deprived. No, the reason why it's actually in the books, it was white. And then people made it to black because black, you could get black silk, which is a very, very fine, light material. And when you wear that, you don't feel the warmth. And that does not show the inner, what you're wearing inside. So it's basically the revealing of the purpose of the burqa, and that's why it's black now. Not because people are being deprived for it. That's why they have to wear black. It's nothing of the sort. And I think it's so shameful. I mean, we're here in this country. I've been in this country for over 25 years. I got married and I came here, a taxpayer for over 20 years now. And, people have called me things. I mean, I've worked at places where my colleagues have joked about me being tacky or whatever. But, I don't take that. I should be proud of what I'm doing. If I feel I'm only going to feel deprived if I react to it. That's when I feel deprived. So are we saying that...
Thank you. This is really interesting. And your religious insight is fascinating, I think, for many listeners as a Muslim woman, to explain the origins of the burqa and why it's black and the face covering. Do you wear a veil personally?
No, I don't actually. I come from a very practicing religious family, and in the Gulf, my dad put me in a convent, and that's how, I was brought up with the thinking that, I used to go for my masses, and my dad was like, no, you have to, because that's the rule of that school. So I am not going to write a letter. I was one of the two Muslim people in the whole of that school, and we had to go for our Sunday masses. It was, that was the rule of the school. Just as when we come to this country...
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful for your both very tolerant and fascinating religious insights. I'm very grateful for that call. We've had lots of texts coming in. Nick says, quite clearly 9 out of 10 of the people making a fuss haven't even read the article. If they did, they would realise how innocuous the burqa comments were. Any newspaper discussing this should be made to also publish the article in full, so everyone knew what the fuss was actually about. That'd be great for Boris's copyright fees. Terry in Portsmouth says, I'm fed up of people saying Boris Johnson is an MP, not a comedian, and therefore shouldn't be able to make a joke. If any of these people have read the history of political commentary, they will see that throughout history, MPs and political writers have written some of the funniest and most satirical essays, speeches. I'd hate to think only comedians can be amusing. I think that's a very fair point, though politicians can often get into trouble if they ever dare to make a joke. Paul in Wales has said, what leadership qualities does Johnson have? He bought water cannon that were never used, supported a garden bridge that was never built. He put a dual national citizen at risk. He would embarrass this country as much as Trump does the US. So Paul is not a great fan. Lana gets in touch to say, Jacob, I wonder whether this is just a cynical way to appeal to the right of the Tory party. Boris is in it for Boris. He is a classic career politician who does not care about the electorate. I find it quite insulting. He thinks everyone will fall for this shtick. It's time his true motives were exposed. Lana, I don't agree with you. I think that's very unfair. I think Boris is very much a supporter of the country at large and backs the voters. But what does Paddy have to say? Paddy says, I've lived and worked in numerous Muslim countries. They're entirely male-dominated, and women are second-class citizens. Islam needs to come out of the Middle Ages and into the 21st century and give women equality with their Western-dressed men. Boris is right in opening the conversation, but he should never be allowed anywhere near the leadership of the party, as he is the most untrustworthy, self-serving and deceitful politician in the country. Well, that's a pretty high bar for him to get to. But it's now just coming up to 10:45. You're listening to hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg from Somerset. We're discussing whether Boris is a prince or a pariah. Please get in touch. We've had lots of calls and texts and tweets, the works. Call 0345 6060 973, text 84850, or tweet at LBC. I'm backing Boris, but I want to see or hear what Shahid in Isha has to say.
Morning, Jacob. Hi there.
Hello, good morning.
I would come at this from two angles, really. The first one is, he's always given the qualities of being somebody that's articulate. And to me, being articulate isn't using long words or complex words. It's using the right words. And as somebody that's a former foreign secretary, possible future prime minister, we have to look at and be critical of what Boris says in that light, in my view. So are these the words of the future prime minister of this country? Personally, I don't think so. And secondly...
So you think he should have phrased himself more carefully?
Well, I understand the point that he was trying to make, but I feel that, not only is he focusing on a very small minority of Muslim women that choose to wear a burqa, I think it's very small. I think it's even less than 1%. The kind of terms the words he's using could be seen as almost trivializing what's quite a serious matter. Additionally,
the numbers issue is quite interesting, because I think in Denmark there are only 150 women who wear the burqa, and they've gone and banned it, and that sort of gives a context that banning seems quite a heavy means to use against something that isn't all that common, and that's what Boris was broadly defending.
No, I agree, but I think the language used then opens up this conversation for people to come on and say that it's oppressive and it's black, so it's a symbol of negativity. And I think the other thing was that in light of the
thank you. We've got to move on. Sorry, because we've got so many callers. So we're going to go to Dwayne in Hanworth. Dwayne, are you there?
Hey, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Morning. Excellent.
Is he a prince or pariah? I believe he's neither, to be honest with you. I just believe that he's a man and who is entitled to his own opinion. Him being a political figure as well in the public eye, he should not really be saying that he has to be politically correct. And unfortunately, in the world we live in today, that's how you have to conduct yourself. It's just the way to be, So I do believe he should have apologised as well, and he did not, which just shows the measure of the man as well. He's absolutely lost the plot, in my opinion. He should just conduct himself better.
Do you agree with the earlier caller who said he should do something symbolic like visiting a mosque?
No, not necessarily.
Do you think that would be ineffective?
Yeah, ineffective. It's all for media, it's all for views and so forth. I mean, Boris has his own agenda, which he's going to do regardless if we agree or disagree, and he's shown that by the comments he's said, things he's done, leaving us in the lurch by departing from Brexit, especially after being so pro-Brexit, and then leaving it up in arms with Theresa May to deal with. So, I mean, he has his own political agenda, Boris Johnson, and doing things like that just riles the people up, which isn't necessarily the best thing to do, given the circumstances and the times we live in. So he should have definitely conducted himself better. Now, sorry, I'm going to rant on.
I think you're quite close to thinking that Boris is a pariah, but we're now going to go to Junior in King's Cross. What's the view from King's Cross?
Good morning, Jacob. First of all, starting on the topic of the burqa, the veil that covers the face, I don't feel like it's acceptable in Western society. I have loads of Muslim friends, and we have this debate, and they don't really feel like it has a place in the Western world. And the thing is, I feel like we all need to accommodate each other. There's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable talking to somebody or engaging with somebody with that on. Like, at night time, I'm a black male. I wouldn't wear a hoodie. And I know it's not in the same bracket. However, I feel like living in a multicultural society, we all need to make each other comfortable. So we need to make adjustments.
But would you ban a nun's habit?
Would I ban it? I don't know.
Because if you're worried about the burqa, what about nuns? Or do you feel that they should be allowed to wear their habit out and about outside of their convents?
That's that's not even totally different. That's something I haven't thought about. But can I just say, in the current climate that we're living in today, somebody with a full veil over their face getting onto like the tube heightens people's fear. And it's not because they're Muslim, it's because they cannot see your face. And we all know what...
But isn't that a prejudice we should overcome? Rather than banning it, shouldn't you and I, when we see people with a full face covering or somebody with a hoodie on, look at that individual and say, that is a law-abiding person just like me, and not judge them because of the clothes that they're wearing? And isn't this the sort of tolerant society we want to have?
Understandable, and that is the tolerant society I want to have. But when it's in certain situations, not disclosing your face makes people frightened. And
another caller said that. So
I go into a bank, I can't wear a helmet.
Yes,
I have to.
That's true.
So my face is seen. So I don't see why somebody else shouldn't do the same thing.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I've had a tweet from Elliot, who says, very kindly, Jacob, it's a pleasure to hear you on LBC. Personally, as a Jewish man who is married to a beautiful Catholic woman, I do not find the burqa to be troublesome. If I were religious, I would wear a yarmulke, skull cap, and my wife would wear a cross. However, we are secular, so we do not. Having said that, if somebody who wants to express their religion through their clothes, I do not see why not. After all, we live in a free country, don't we? I think Boris Johnson was very uncouth and insensitive with his diatribe and really should apologise to the people he has offended. Also, the burqa, I'm informed it is more about their culture rather than some kind of Islamic threat to our Judeo-Christian country. Anyway, let's keep Britain as free as it is and not succumb to any extreme left or right-wing fear tactics. Well, Elliot, thank you for that balanced and thoughtful comment. And I'm now going to go to Tim in Oakshott. Tim, what are your views today?
Yes, good morning, Jacob. I think if Boris has aspirations to Prime Minister, then the kind of language that is used, recourse to the sort of schoolboy humour probably needs to be avoided. The article he wrote in the main is very sensible. I think, I've lived in countries where they ban, just about everything, and it just creates resentment. I don't particularly like the burqa, but it doesn't upset me in any way. It's really a practical thing that would concern me. Our culture, our heritage is Judeo-Christian, and as a general rule, people do not cover their faces. So when you're at an airport or a bank or a hospital or court, indeed, that is going to create a problem. And I dare say there is a precedent for it. But I think that the schoolboy humour part, probably he needs to dispense with. And I mean, I know he's accident prone, and that is Boris, but clearly he knew the effect it was going to have. So I guess that he's trying to appeal to, shall we say, a more reactionary right-wing audience, which, probably...
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm trying to get in as many calls as possible, so I'm going to go to Nikki in Bedford. Nikki, what do you think of that? What are your thoughts on Boris?
Hi, Jacob. I think that Boris is free to, express an opinion on the burqa, but is it really necessary for him to level insults and hurl these kinds of accusations at people? I mean, he's a very well-read, well-educated gentleman. Does he not have an excellent command of the English language that he can express an opinion without insulting somebody? I mean, if he was an 8-year-old child in a school ground, that case could be made that, no other words come to his mind. But, I may not agree with a lot of things that you say, Jacob, but you don't come across as anything but well-mannered, well-read, and respectful. So why does Boris get this pass to come across as a buffoon, and that to a rude one? If a Sikh gentleman is walking down the road with a turban on his head, I wouldn't dare to say it, but what if Boris now next says, oh, he looks like a man with a towel on his head? I mean, that's just rude. It's insulting. And how does nobody see that?
So your view is that Boris is allowed to say what he wants, but it's bad manners, and that actually in society we don't want bad manners?
He's not allowed to say. He can express.
But do you think he should be punished for it?
I think he should be censured, and I think he should be pulled up on that, yes, because we don't want our children and the next generation to go around levelling insults at people, either in print or in voice.
Okay.
That's my view.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm just going to go quickly to John in Maidenhead. So, what are your views?
Hi, Jake. Yeah,
in the Prime Minister's constituency.
Yeah, I know, Theresa. I made a comparison with you made a comparison with the Habit, not a like-for-like comparison, simply because nuns don't cover faces. The issue is, should a person be allowed to cover their face in public? Now, imagine somebody wearing a mask, full face mask, and some of the young generation, the drill generation, are doing that. If you walk around town with a mask on and walk into the bank with a mask on, you're going to get stopped. Is it offensive? Is it religious not to show your face? Absolutely not. There's nothing in Islam which says you can't show your face. And the origins of not the burqa is to protect women from men. That was the reason why they had the dress in the first place. It's not religious. So I think, and in law, in court, you're obliged to remove your face because the judge and the jury needs to see your expression when giving evidence. It's the same in society. For cohesion of society, we need to see people's faces.
Thank you very much. We've got to get off to the news now, but I'm really pleased. We've had friends of the Prime Minister calling in this morning to give us their views, and we really have had lots of calls in this subject, and I want to give as many people as possible the chance to have their say about Boris Johnson's burqa comments. We're slightly going to change tack from whether Boris is a prince or a pariah. I want to know whether an apology from Boris would make any difference at all. Or would it be one of those non-apologies apologies? I'm very sorry if I've caused any offence type of weasel words that everyone thinks are pretty wet and feeble. And would it change the views of those who've been offended, or has the offence already been made? If you think the damage is done, call 0345 6060 973. If an apology would be important to you, text 84850. Or if no apologies needed, tweet LBC at LBC. Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg. I'm live from God's own county of Somerset, and I've had so many tweets on the subject of whether Boris is a prince or a pariah that I want to give as many people as possible the chance to talk about what he said on the burqa. But we're going to have a slight change of tack. I want to know whether you think an apology from Boris would make any difference at all. If you think the damage is done, call 0345 6060 973. If you think an apology still means something to you, text 84850. Or if you think, as I do, that apology simply isn't needed, tweet me at LBC. So we're now going to go to Naeem in St Albans. Do you think an apology would do any good at this stage?
Good morning, Jacob. Before I do, may I make a small request? I mean, I've been listening to your programme for the last hour, and there's a lot of people ringing up saying they fear the burqa, they fear the face veil. I don't want to do your producer's job, but what I'm asking you is that why don't you put the question out? Is that what is it that people find so offensive about the face veil? What is it? Why are they scared? Was someone dressed whose only purpose to wear that face veil is to get closer to God? So that's just my humble request. If you can put that out, because
I think that
Muslim. I don't. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, thank you. You've done that. That's a really important question, that it's merely an expression of religious faith and piety. Why on earth should anybody be frightened? I rather agree with you. So thank you for raising that point.
A lot of people are just saying they're fearful, but ask them why. I mean, I ask people, why are you scared of it? And when you ask them that, they sort of say, well, actually, I don't know why I'm scared of it. So, maybe Boris has manufactured opinion with his comment, but, let's get to the bottom of it. Anyway, to your question, look, I think an apology is normally, I believe, and if you do something wrong, the quicker you put it right, the better it is for you personally, spiritually, and for the people that you've offended. This has gone on for 4 or 5 days now, okay? And to me, it smells completely like Boris trying to get publicity to mount a bid to become the next PM or leader. I think an apology, I'm a Muslim, I was very upset. I wasn't offended because we live in a society where we have to accept lots of different things. I mean, for example, if two men had a public display of affection, I actually find that very upsetting, but I accept it, and we accept it now as a society, okay? I'm asking people to accept people the way they are. If Boris has made this comment, if he had apologised within 24 to 48 hours, yes, I think it would have been better for him, okay? He let it drag on, and that's why it seems that this was a ploy for him to do something on a grand scale. And I think an apology now is too little, too late. What he needs to do, really,
too late. Okay,
is live with the consequences.
Okay, well, thank you, because that's basically what Shane texts. He says it would be important if Boris apologised. It would unfortunately signal Boris had given up on the leadership and succumbed to the faux outrage, virtue signalling of the far left and those unable to put together an intelligent train of thought. So Shane is quite forthright in his views. But Ron has called in from Camden. And Ron, do you think Boris's apology now would be effective or waste of time?
Good morning, Jacob. Hope you're well. His bid at the moment, I mean, he came out of the cabinet. He was meant to be doing a job for this country, and that was to sort out, obviously, us coming out of the EU, which he abandoned ship. Prior to the actual vote, I think he let a lot of his supporters in the Conservative Party down when he flim-flammed and changed. And he always seems to be going for a kind of populist position, which maybe is modern politics.
Okay, but you're not a Boris fan, so but what about this apology question? Do you think he should apologise? That's what we're trying to get to.
That's right. His apology...
You think he should apologise now and it would make a difference?
Well, his apology would only be to appease the criticism, because he doesn't want to apologise, because he knows that's empowering the UKIP mass conservative kind of vote. And this thing about him being educated, like yourself, actually, there's a certain amount of people in politics that have been to elitist schools, Uxbridge, Cambridge and whatever, and they all, no matter what they do in this society, they seem to be, allowed to do it, insult people. I mean, if you said something in relation to maybe an Orthodox Jewish gentleman's hat and his ringlets and so on, he wouldn't touch the ground in politics again in this country, just like Corbyn is going through at the moment. So I do think it's the dividing of the ways at the moment. Obviously yourself and Boris and certain people, the Trump side in America, you've decided to rally the forces of the right wing in the West, for whatever reason, and picking weak targets and insulting people will only lead to the worst aspects of what rose in the 30s and came to be mass slaughter in the 40s as the Second World War.
OK, I think we're going a bit far now, so I don't think we're heading down that route at all. I think the comparisons with the 30s are simply inaccurate, just on the back of one article that says the burqa isn't an attractive garment. So we'll now go to Dan in Chelmsford. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. Look, first of all, I've heard many people say that this is some sort of conspiracy or plot to discredit Boris because he's sort of a candidate for becoming the Prime Minister. I don't think that's the case at all, to be honest. I think that's just a distraction to remove attention from what's going on. That said, to be honest, I don't think an apology would even matter at this stage. And the reason why I say this is because while I don't think his comments were racially motivated, I think that he was being deliberately offensive and somewhat discriminative. The reason for that is, what if he had said that about the Jews, I know they want to worship their God, but why do they need to wear a burnt pancake at the back of their head? Or when I see a Jew, I feel like saying, do you want some strawberry sauce with that? Do you know what I mean? Or I mean, again, it's widely known that black women wear extensions and wigs. And mostly is made from horse's tail. Now, what if he had said something along the lines of, I got slapped by a ponytail the other day? It's something directed at the blacks and the Jews. He would have got a complete sort of bashing for that. But, because it's so fashion these days, obviously because of what's happened with Syria and the rest of the countries and the migrants that have come over, it's so fashionable to have a go at Muslims. I mean, I'm not a Muslim, and by the way, I don't like...
But isn't the whole point of the burqa to hide a woman's beauty? And therefore to say that the burqa is not an elegant garment? But that's the point of the burqa, and that therefore to say it's not elegant is... its purpose, isn't it? That's the bit that I don't understand. I don't think it is the same as references to other religious items of clothing, because that's not their purpose specifically, or isn't in most cases.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the difference you put, that most people put when it comes to the Jews and the rest of the rest of the ethnic backgrounds. Right? If it was a Jew that was offended, he'll be immediately accused of anti-Semitism and so on. But if it's somebody else, we saw it, let's have a debate about it. But anyway, the point is, I'm against burqas anyway, because I personally think when it comes to human liberties, abomination of human liberties. But you can't miss the point. I mean, you
think it's an oppression of women?
Absolutely, I do. And to the women that think that they're worshipping their God by wearing the garment, I'll tell them this. If a woman was in an abusive relationship, a domestic violence and so on, and she thought that, it's what I can do with whatever I want in my body, if that was her argument, people would have to step in and say, no, this is not right. I think the burqa is just an absolute...
Well, Boris has certainly got this argument going, and it's developing, so I'm now going to go to Jack in Buxton to see whether he thinks Boris should make an apology or not.
Good morning, Jacob. So I do think Boris should apologise, but I think it would be quite a symbolic gesture more than anything else. I think most of us know that he doesn't really mean the apology. It's more to save face a little bit with certain people who might feel offended and want an apology anyway. But I do think that the damage is already done, especially considering if, like, I go on Facebook now, you see a lot of Britain First being shared by people that I know who feel almost validated by these comments. And there's also, like, Knights of the Templar type Facebook groups, which are, if you go through their Facebook feed, it's very Islamophobic, very hatred towards Muslims.
I don't know about these groups, but I think your point, Jack, on an apology is now too late and therefore would be pointless is one I would share. I'm not in favour of an apology anyway, nor is Ken, who texts, "Hi Jacob, no apology required. This is a dreadful attack on freedom of speech, to be expected from those who want to shut down all remarks, criticism of Islam." And Barry agrees, Boris should not apologise. I sense people are more outraged because of who it was who has made the comment rather than by what they actually said. And Edward, why does causing offence warrant an apology? We cannot be held accountable for the reaction our comments cause. We can only be held accountable for what we actually say. And what Boris said was completely fair. I think Edward is, as I am, against the non-apology apology, saying I'm sorry if I've caused any offence, which is usually the most frightful humbug. It's just coming up to 1:15. You're listening to Jacob Rees Mogg. Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg. I'm broadcasting from God's Own County down in Somerset, where the weather's a bit overcast, which will be a pity for the Clutton Flower Show, which is coming later, where I hope to see many listeners. I'll be opening it at 2 o'clock, so if you're there, come up and say hello. We're discussing this morning the issue of Boris Johnson and the burqa, whether he's a prince or a pariah of the Tory party, but also whether he should apologise and if that apology would be accepted. I'd be really interested if you would call in with your views. We've had lots already, or text them. You can text on 84850, you can call on 0345 6060 973, or tweet at LBC, particularly if you are a Muslim and you have views on this in either direction. And it's interesting to think what Boris must be thinking about all this. He's been on holiday in Italy for the past week, and according to press reports, when he heard he was being referred to the Standards Commission of the Conservative Party for a show trial, he dived in the swimming pool and shrugged it off in his characteristically phlegmatic way. And I guess he's taking all this pretty much in his stride, that it's the way of political life nowadays, that people always gaff hunting and they try and make great stories out of relatively minor comments, and they judge the issue before they put it to the commission. And that, I would think, is something that would concern him, that he gets asked to apologise before the internal procedures of the Conservative Party are used. And a man of his standing and stature probably thinks that justice should be done properly if it's going to be done at all. But one can't be certain what he thinks, but I guess he's taking most of it in his stride. Sue has sent in a text to say, does this make any difference? An apology from Boris would give rise to a slew of other cans of worms. I think an apology is neither due nor appropriate. And I'd like to know now what Peter in Wimbledon thinks. Good morning, Peter.
Very good morning to you. I think apologies is absolutely irrelevant. The issue here is, I think we and yourself, Jacob, are wasting time talking about issues of such a little importance, because it's not about freedom of speech, it's not about freedom of wear anything, because we know that people should be free to express themselves and people should be free to wear whatever they like. The issue here is that a former cabinet minister, a member of parliament, used derogatory words to describe some people who wear religious clothing. That is the end of it. And he only weaponizes those people on the right wing of your party and UKIPers and give them ammunition to be obnoxious to people on the streets. Because people like Boris in the high offices should be more responsible in the choice of words. It's not like he said something in the spur of the moment. He said it carefully, and he said it in his own time when he wrote the article. So he must have thought about what he's writing and the words he's using. And in my opinion, all this happening now, you talking for 2 hours about the issue of such a little importance, instead of talking about issues of a greater importance to this country, which is Brexit, and the things like people.
But you've called in on this issue of such little importance. So why have you called in on this issue if it's so unimportant? Why aren't you listening to the?
Well, I called in, Jacob, just to bring your attention to things like people like yourself and other Brexiteers. You're moving funds out of this country, while telling the nation that Brexit is going to be so good and rosy.
No, I'm not.
And how long are you going to be keeping a straight?
I'm not moving any funds out of this country. Well, I can give very straight face when people come on and say things that they're wrong about. But let's go to Rosie in Bath, because having somebody from Somerset, we may get a bit more comment on the actual subject in hand. Rosie, do you think an apology is due from Mr. Johnson?
No, I certainly don't think an apology is due. And I think people are just absolutely missing the point of what Boris Johnson wrote. He wrote an article which was absolutely speaking up for women. And obviously he thinks that some are being repressed. But I'm a little bit nervous. I had this rehearsed, but he does. He thinks.
Well, go ahead. We're delighted to hear from you.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying, no, absolutely, he shouldn't apologise. And I think people are missing the point of his article completely. He's speaking up for women. They should wear what they want. But obviously, he feels that some women are being repressed. And he feels that if they want to wear that sort of thing, then that's what they end up looking like. It's just a comment, like you would say someone in a fancy dress or someone with pink hair. But he actually was talking up people because in this country we can wear what we like, basically.
Thank you very much.
Nervous call.
Well, I'm very grateful. I knew that a caller... Well, no, I knew a caller from Somerset would speak good sense, so thank you very much for coming on. And we're now going to go to Tahir in Watford. Good morning.
Good morning. I was just listening intently to all the discussions he made. I mean, I personally feel that he shouldn't apologise. You know, we're in a country that champions free speech, and it's only correct. It's not. I do believe he has a responsibility not to marginalise communities, and that inevitably will happen. But in the interest of free speech, no, he shouldn't apologise. However, that comes as a bit of a disclaimer. You know, I believe that people should be allowed to wear what they want. I mean, whether it's Islamically or not, whether that's permitted, I think it's a very vague area. I don't think the face should be covered anyway. If people do choose to do that, they should be prepared to open up to security procedures such as airports, banks, etc. You know, have a little bit of a respect for certain security procedures. Otherwise, if you want to spend their life, you know, totally covered up, you know, we've got to accept that some people do choose to be like this. Not everyone is oppressed. It is actually a choice, whether it's some lack of knowledge or whatever.
Thank you.
Sorry, go on.
That's a great point, and I want to go now to Yasmin in Bolton, because, Yasmin, I understand you used to wear a burqa, so did you feel oppressed when you wore a burqa, or was it a free choice?
It wasn't a free choice for me when I wore a burqa. It was because one of my family members wanted me to have an arranged marriage, which I got away from, thank goodness, and I married an Englishman. I've been married to him for 35 years. The fact is, a lot of the women do not have choices to do with wearing burqas, because it's the males in the family that say they have to wear it, or else they literally cannot go out. They have to adhere to that form of dress. And there's a lot of women who don't mind wearing it for their religious beliefs. But overall, the way I look at it is this: if a woman wants to wear it, free choice, free will, she should be able to. I like Boris. I've always liked Boris. I always think he gets a bad deal. I'd like Boris to be the next Prime Minister personally. And I like you as well. But the thing is, at the end of the day, a lot of women are put in a position where it's a cultural thing and they have to wear it and adhere to it. And it's a shame, really, that it's about clothing, because what it should be is about integrating more Asians into our society within the parameters of the way they feel comfortable, the way they go forward. And the hardest thing that I see is when children wear burqas, because they're not getting the sunshine, the vitamin D from the sunshine. That's causing issues as well. But that's the way I feel about it, Jacob.
I think that's really important. Thank you so much for your call and sharing your personal experience with us, which I think will be educative for many people, including me, listening to the programme. So thank you. I'm now going to Shahzad in Manchester to get your experiences and your views, please.
Hi, Jacob. I certainly don't think...
Hello.
I feel that... Hi. I don't think Boris should apologise for this. I mean, the last caller actually touched on something that I wanted to bring up as well, and that is there are a significant number of Muslim women in this country who are actually forced into wearing the veil. I accept that there are Muslim women that choose to wear the veil as well, of their own accord, but there are certainly Muslim women. You've only got to go to certain parts of the north of the country. I'm talking about places like Huddersfield, Wakefield, where you've got very close communities in that there isn't much intermingling with the mainstream population. You know, you've got pockets of ghettoization, and in these areas you have male authorities and people that, unfortunately, some individuals who adhere to the Wahhabi doctrine of Islam, and because of that they feel that it's a mandatory that a woman must be covered from head to toe. Certainly the vast majority of Muslims do not hold that view, and there's nothing in the Quran that says that a woman should wear a burqa. In fact, it actually encourages the opposite, in that the only real ruling is that you should dress modestly and actually try and fit into the society that you're in, as long as you're not, being ostentatious or, revealing huge amounts of flesh. So I think...
okay, well, thank you for that. Very interested to hear from people who can tell us more about what the Quran says so that we can have a better understanding. So thank you for your expertise. A few text. Alex says, Boris certainly should not apologise. They were distasteful comments, but not Islamophobic or racist. And Caroline says, politicians showing they're getting involved with religion is bad. They need to sort country, let law do rest. We need jobs, homes, healthcare, proper tax and fair regulations. That's politicians' main job. The rest is distractions and blame game. We're just coming up to the news. It's Jacob Rees Mogg on LBC. It's 11:30. Hello, this is Jacob Rees Mogg. We're discussing whether Boris Johnson is a prince or pariah within the Conservative Party, and whether if he apologised now that would make any difference at all. Do please get involved, especially if you wear or have ever worn the burqa. We'd be really interested to hear from you, as we were from Yasmin earlier. Call on 0345 6060 973, text on 84850, or tweet at LBC. And we're going to go straight to Mbuko in Stevenage, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Rees Mogg, what I would like to say is that, first of all, Boris... Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello? Okay, Mr. Rees Mogg.
Hello, please go ahead. Yeah.
What I would like to say is that Boris Johnson should not, and definitely must not apologize for what he had said. I totally disagree with the niqab, because it has no religious, you can say, no religious diction coming from anywhere that you must cover your face. All right? For the simple reason...
Okay.
In fact, it says in Islam that it's the men who should lower their gaze, and the women should not make their figure obvious for the fact, but it doesn't say anything about covering their faces. And when one goes for Hajj, the most holy of the holiest of times, and the holy place Mecca, women are strictly forbidden to cover their face. So people like Lord Sheikh, I don't know where they pop up from, and they say it's part of Islam. Definitely not. It's not part of Islam. I'm not a scholar, and I'm not a very holy person, but at least I've got some knowledge, and I read a bit about it. So I think people like Lord Sheikh should also go and read a bit about it.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I'm now going to go to Claudia in Surrey. What's your view on whether Boris should apologise?
Oh, good morning, Jacob. It's nice to talk to you. And I was just actually, what I wanted to talk about was one of your, the callers asked what it is that we don't like about the niqab, the burqa. And so what I wanted to say, it's a little bit like when you say you don't want anonymous tweets. I like to see the face of someone I'm talking to, and I feel disadvantaged if they can see mine and I can't see theirs. So that was just answering his question about it. And the other thing...
But does it frighten you? Does it frighten you?
It doesn't frighten me. It just puts me, I feel disadvantaged. Maybe it's because something I'm not used to. But as regards whether Boris should apologise or not, I don't think that you can have your cake and eat it. If you want Boris to apologise, it means that there is no freedom of speech, and therefore we can dictate what you wear as well. So I think that you can't have it both ways. I personally, I'm worried that Theresa May would get involved in all of this. And my question to Theresa May would be, are we pandering to Saudi Arabia by any chance? Because it seems that Saudi Arabia gets very special treatment these days. And this, for me, is...
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. We had one of her friends ring in earlier. Perhaps he'll raise it with her later. But Teddy tweets or sends in a text to disagree. He says, it's worrying that so many people are supportive of Boris's right to use racist insults and inflammatory language disguised as chummy humour in making a point. Vulnerable Muslim women already face attacks, and these comments fan the flames of Islamophobia, increasing the risk of attacks. Boris is aware of this but craves attention. Apology not needed. He got what he wanted. Shame on him. So that's Teddy's view, but Leslie takes the other line. Boris must not apologise. This is faux outrage whipped up by the permanently offended, capital P and capital O, simply because it's Boris. Besides, the outcry just legitimises this dreadful oppressive garb. Long may Boris speak out. So let's now go to Laura in Bath. Good morning, Laura.
Hi there. I just wanted to say I don't feel like Boris should apologise. Oh, sorry, that's my children in the background. I don't feel like he should apologise because it would be insincere and kind of insulting to have... There's nothing worse than someone who wants to apologise but doesn't really mean it. My other point is I used to be a member of your constituency, actually. And over the past couple of years, there's been sort of this underbelly of racism in our society that I feel... When people like Boris make these kind of comments, it gives them a voice. It gives them a legitimacy. Up until I lived in your constituency for about 20 years, and up until about 2 years ago, I get shouted at in the street. I have racist football chants shouted at me in front of my children. I feel like all these little things, especially with Brexit, and if you're for or against it, I don't think there's any denying that it was based on immigration, and a lot of people took that fact and ran with it as an excuse to be racist. And it affected me personally as well. So, yeah, I don't think she should apologise. But
so where did you live in North East Somerset?
In Midsummer Norton.
In Midsummer Norton, right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for calling in. As you're in Bath, you're not far from Clutton, so I may see you at the Clutton Flower Show later with a bit of luck. But I'll now go slightly further away to Adam in Hereford.
Hi, Jacob. You all right? Hello?
Morning. Yes, thank you.
Hi. I'm just calling to say, essentially, this isn't an issue of freedom of speech. Everyone agrees he has the right to say it. But should he be saying it as a potential next Prime Minister of this country? Is it statesmanlike, or is it kind of an import from America, this kind of Trumpian style of doing politics, just insulting, begging attention, things like that? That's my first point. The second point is, would he have said the same thing about ultra-Orthodox Jews looking ridiculous with the sideburns or whatever? I don't think they do, but I'm saying, would he have said the same thing, and would it have been accepted? The third thing is that he needs to be aware, and he is probably aware, that in different cultures, different things look ridiculous to different people. A woman in a bikini looks ridiculous in most of the Arab world. A man in a dress...
But you wouldn't mind... But you wouldn't mind somebody criticising a lady for wearing a bikini, would you? You wouldn't think that it was wrong to say that was unsuitable dress?
A bikini has no...
No, but if somebody went into a church wearing a bikini, you might say that's not suitable dress. I think we've lost Adam in Hereford on that point, but we'll go to Alex in Oxford.
Hello, Jacob. Yes, so I'd just like to make a brief point. I think, much as I think people should have the freedom to make all sorts of jokes, even about my own religion, which is the same as yours, I think that Boris should apologise on this occasion because of the political context, which I'm sure you understand, and because he specifically criticised, not, as you put it, the burqa for being unattractive, but women wearing it, which to some people is a kind of dog whistle license to attack women in the street. Now, those people you may think are entirely contemptible, but unfortunately they do exist, and so politicians should watch their words more carefully, I think. If I might make one other point related, the thing about conflating this with nuns and yarmulkes, that's totally different. It's not a religious thing. It's the point of seeing somebody's face. And you can always, even the most traditionalist nun, you can always see her face. And the Orthodox Jews, you see their faces. So there's nothing to do. Denmark didn't ban the burqa specifically. They banned face coverings. And that might have perhaps prevented suicide bombing in Afghanistan recently, which was done by someone who wore a burqa as disguise. So I don't know what you think about
thank you, Alex, for your very measured comments. I think you put it in a very balanced way, and that dog whistle politics is a very unpleasant form of politics. I don't think Boris was doing that, but thank you for calling. We're now going to go to Gunez in Woodford. Good morning.
Hello, then. Good morning. This is Gunez. Hi. As a Muslim, I'd like to say that, I call myself liberal Muslim. I think Boris should not apologize what he said or written down. This is a freedom of country, so this is the reason why I came here. I think Islam, as far as I understand Islam or Quran, doesn't tell people, off or, it does allow you to say whatever you want to say. That's what I believe. However, and this is one point, another point is really sad. As a liberal person, Muslim liberal person, I feel really sorry because the world goes in the wrong direction that which I don't want, or people like me, don't want goes this way. Because at the moment, the populism, Trump in USA or Brexit in UK, or there are some countries like Hungary and other countries. Goes, the racism is going very, is the populism at the moment, because Boris knew what he was writing down, because he knew that he is going to gain some votes. That's what he has written down. He knew there is a populism that he can gain some. This is sad. That as a liberal person myself, Muslim liberal person, I feel sad. However, I think he should not apologize.
Rees Mogg from Somerset. Okay, well, thank you for that. Boris Johnson, the burqa, whether he should apologise or not apologise. We've had lots and lots of calls. If you wear the burqa, we'd be particularly interested to hear from you. Do call 0345 60 60 973, text 84850, or tweet at LBC. Naeem texted us to say, Boris has now alienated himself from the international community beyond Europe, at a time when Britain needs to build new alliances and robust trade agreements that are all in the national interest. How can such a man represent this great nation following his shambles as Foreign Secretary? It's not my view, I must confess, but thank you for sending in your view. Ben says, and this I completely agree with, Jacob, we don't do banning things in this country. That's why we use ridicule as a way of getting people to stop doing silly things. And I wouldn't go as far as this, because I think it's a matter of choice, like wearing a burqa in Britain. Without ridicule, we would only be able to use force to stop this nonsense, and that's not very liberal. Max says, with freedom comes responsibility not to insult others. We've been hearing about anti-Semitism for weeks now. Look what is happening to the Labour Party. It's falling apart. Why won't the Tories learn from Corbyn's mistakes? Well, on that, I'm going to go to Gary in Glasgow. Gary, do you think Boris Johnson should apologise, and if he did, that apology would count for anything?
Well, before I answer that question, I'd like to hear more from more qualified voices like the National Secular Society on this subject, and not from a politicking Eton buffoon. I don't think he has anything.
Do you mean me or
apologise
Boris on that?
Well, you're both the same, I think. But anyway, on that
thank you.
subject, well, you would expect that from me. I'm an SNP supporter. But I want to say that women fought in this country with their lives against this Judeo-Christian culture to enable them to wear what they like. It is a slap in the face when we have women from other countries coming to this country and wearing something that is not only harmful to themselves, because we have high rates of osteoporosis among Asian women, but something that is oppressive and a symbol of religion and patriarchy.
OK, but why should you choose rather than them? Why should it be decided by you?
I would defend the right of women to wear what they like. I would never take that away from them. But we need to do more to take away faith schools in this country, to have secular schools, to teach free thinking, critical thinking. And
but you are telling people what to do.
No, I'm not.
You're telling them not to go to faith schools?
We don't have critical thinking in our schools. Faith is an ideology, and we have every right to criticise it, to undermine it. And I think I think that's.
But you're going further than that. You want to stop faith schools. So that's not very liberal, is it? You're quite authoritarian, really.
No, not at all. You want a school with one faith. Children have a right to not have a faith, and they're not given that right.
I want choice.
Schools. It's not about choice, is it? A Catholic school, for example.
Well, it is, you see.
No.
I can choose to send my children to a Catholic school or not. That's up to parents, surely, not up to you. You see, you say you're liberal, and then you want to tell people what to do. I don't think you can have both sides of it.
Jacob, when you've got Catholic schools that are getting state funding, and parents who want their children to have an all-round education and education, not their children to be taught faith, they have to bus.
They're free to choose another school.
Without their often outside
That's
of
choice.
their area. It's not choice.
That's called choice. And that seems to me to be freedom, and in a free society that's what we like. So let's go to Serena in Ilford. Serena, what's your view on this?
Hi. My view is purely that I agree that there should be a level of equalism, whether it's male or female. But I'm going to come in on the section where we're promoting inclusion, and in this country, everybody is looked at equally, regardless of their faith, the practicing methods and everything. Now, where we promote inclusion, we all want to look the same, regardless of how people follow their faith individually in their own private homes, let's say. But when we do things like this, and personally, I'm not against it, but what I'm saying is it doesn't help inclusion and working as a community and promoting cohesion. These kind of acts promote secular, we are secluding communities, and that's where communities get secularized.
OK, so do you think Boris should apologise? How does this tie in with what Boris said?
No, I don't think Boris should apologise, to be fair, because I think he's right in his way of saying that we should be promoting inclusion.
OK. Well, thank you for that. We're going to go to Gloria in Leamington.
Hey, good morning, Jacob. I just wanted to say to you that Boris knows what he's doing. I know you say that he's charismatic, he's intelligent. Just to refer to intelligence, if you're intelligent, it doesn't mean that you are the most sensible person to be running the country. That's by and by. But he's very manipulative, and that is very destructive to our society, especially if you want to be a leader. The question, Jacob, I need you to ask me, why has Boris timed this article at this particular time? Do you know why? Hello?
Well, I think because of Denmark. Because of Denmark banning the burqa, that was the reason. That was the news story that led to him writing about maintaining freedom in this country.
Right.
So that's the answer to that. Well, so let's go to David in Hammersmith, because I want to get in as many calls as possible.
But can
we get David in Hammersmith? Sorry. Hello, David. Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Far away.
Okay, so I don't think Boris should apologise at all. I mean, I've always thought he's a bit of a a buffoon, a very personable buffoon, but quite funny. I think you're a better potential leader, but that's another subject. The thing is, I find myself supporting him because he's the underdog. I think there's a lot of fake offence going on, people feigning offence to get what they want. This isn't Islamophobic. It can't be Islamophobic because it's not in the Quran or in Islam. And in fact, if you go to Mecca, it's banned concealing your face. And that's the most devout place in Islam. Now, I had a neighbour who I spoke to about this because she used to go out and put her bins out in her pyjamas. And yet she was ragged up in all of the burqa and everything. And I just said to her, look, I'm very ignorant about these things, tell me how this works. And she just said, look, when I go to the mosque, I'm in a community that they shun us if we don't do this. And that's how she felt. And she said they don't say it directly. It's just, they'll say things to her husband. It's encouraged. And I just think it's sad. I've seen 5-year-olds dressed up in this, and I think that Taj Harge, who's a imam in Oxford, his comments about it are very sensible. And I think that at the end of the day, Boris has made a valid point. He's not actually gone against it, but we mustn't have this situation where it's an offence. It's a crime to create offence just because somebody's religious. I respect people's religion, but that doesn't mean I believe what they believe. And I think that's the thing they have a difficulty with. That's my thoughts on it.
That's a really good point. Thank you for that. As somebody who is religious, I think people are entitled to criticise your religion, and then you're entitled to defend it back. Carl in Belfast, do you think Boris should apologise or have any thoughts on the burqa issue?
I didn't know that Clutton had the flower show on this weekend.
Oh, it does, yes.
I know the area very well. I used to live in Temple Cloud and Midsummer Norton, so it's nice to speak to you.
Oh, well, thank you for calling.
You've got a big lag on this morning, I think. It's probably to do with the line. But coming into the burqa thing, I mean, it's a very intimidating thing.
How do you find it intimidating?
I just feel as if I've been in tune with current affairs and politics for the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and we have had terrorist attacks across Europe and the UK. And whenever I see somebody with the burqa on, if I'm in London or something, it just kind of freaks me out a little bit. I don't want to come across as some sort of racist kind of person, because I'm not.
Well, I'm going to squeeze in one more call, so sorry to cut you off so quickly, but I want to go to Ahmed in Cardiff before we have to finish. Ahmed, over to you.
Hello, hi. I don't really think that Boris should apologize at all. I was born a Muslim myself. On the outside of it, women seem to have the choice, but in reality, they don't have a choice. They are born in a culture which push them towards wearing the burqa in the long term. The evidence of that, if you ask any adult woman who did not wear a burqa in her adult life, did she eventually change to wearing the burqa? I guess no. The second thing, in my opinion, what about my own freedom? I am not comfortable in sitting in front of an individual where my face is totally apparent to her, and I can have the same. Thirdly, which is my last point, and thank you for listening to me, is where is the line? There should be a line eventually beyond which a decision has to be taken that enough is enough.
Well, thank you, Ahmed. You've done that brilliantly swiftly. You give me time to read out one more text, which is from another anonymous. Boris should not apologise. We should all have a right to freedom of speech. When they insulted Trump with the giant blimp, no one apologised. You can't have one law for one, for the other. It cuts both ways. Well, thank you very much for all your calls and tweets. At Lord's, it's 38 for 2, so thank you for keeping yourselves away from the cricket for the last hour. It's Jacob Rees Mogg broadcasting from Somerset, but there are lots more excitements coming up on LBC. At 3 o'clock, it's Andrew Castle, but next up after news, it's Ian Payne.
I'm right here now, actually, Jacob. Thank you very much for an entertaining